This is VOCM Open Line. Call 709-273-5211 or 1-888-590-8626. The views and opinions of this program are not necessarily those of this station. The biggest conversation in Newfoundland and Labrador starts now. Here's VOCM Open Line host Paddy Daly.
Well, all right, and good morning to you. Thank you so much for tuning into the program. It's Friday, May the 9th. This is Open Line. I'm your host, Paddy Daly. David Williams. He's producing the Come On With It edition of the program. So if you're in the St. John's metro region, the number to dial to get in the queue and on the air, 709-273-5211. Elsewhere, toll-free long distance, 1-888-590-VOCM. which is 86-26. So lots of boisterous Toronto Maple Leaf fans here in the building today. Of course, the game was a couple of nights ago. And I heard the stat. I think this is accurate. It's the first time since 1987 that the Leafs have had a 2-0 lead in the second round of the playoffs. And, of course, down in Florida now to playing Game 3 this evening. So Leafs fans are pretty pleased. All right. For some minor hockey families, you'll know the name Quinn Norman, but it's worth putting it back out there for those of you who have never heard that name. He's an outstanding young hockey player. He plays for the Vaughan Kings AAA under-16s. He just participated in the Quebec Major Junior Hockey League Cup. So that's players under the age of 16 playing in this tournament in front of all the Quebec Major Junior Hockey League team management and scouts in attendance. He made the all-tournament team. Yeah, get going here, Patty. So he's one of the top 6 guys in the tournament, and he's got a super bright future. I've seen some videos. The kid can dance, so good for him. Also spoke with Gary Corbett, the president of softball Newfoundland and Labrador. Was that early this week or last week? Early this week? Okay. So Gary was on the show talking about some of the selection camps that were happening for Team Canada to represent the country in the upcoming Worlds. And we had a bunch of players who were eligible, and we've got 4 that made the team. So Shane Boland made the team, Sean Cleary made the team, Brad Ezekiel, Pomeroy, and Colin Walsh. So fantastic stuff. Good for them. Congratulations. Good luck, and go get them. All right. So we know that ride sharing has come to the city and surrounding area. And now apparently Uber is planning on expanding right across the province. There are certainly some transportation gaps in different pockets of Newfoundland and Labrador, and so I'm sure this will be welcome in some corners. As soon as I saw the story this morning, I thought, I wonder what are the chances of a couple of the local cabbies who we talk with here, maybe on the program and via email, if they're going to react to that story, and no surprise, they sure did. So, look, you do whatever you like, right? If you want to take Uber, then do it. If you want to support the local cab companies, do that. We do know there's a distinct difference where the money goes. A lot of money that is spent on Uber flows out of province. The money spent on the local cabbies stays in the province. So I only bring it up because I was just in Gander, and there is some transportation gaps, as I just mentioned. But expanding it across the province, coming to somewhere near you in the near future, we're told. All right, stick with Labrador here for a second. Curiously, got an email on Monday asking me if I had any sort of update about Bell Canada's plan to expand high-speed internet and cell phone service in different parts of Labrador. And I said, no, I don't. I wrote Bell and actually asked for a status update. No reply, of course. But then you see the story this morning that they are pulling the plug on it. So they had announced this some years back, right? In March of 2022, $22 million from the federal government in an effort to bring those services to 1,000 households, notably Nain, Natwashish, Hopedale, Makovic, Postville, and Rigolette. It's gone. So they've talked about exploding costs. Now that investment was supposed to be around $30 million. Now a total of $110 million, and it is not happening. They just say it's cost prohibitive, and you give up the issue, you add the issue of the challenging geography. So the folks who were emailing me about this particular project from Bell, it's on the shelf. So bad news. Add to it, there's no end to the emails we get regarding provincial airlines and the so-called air loop that's been created between St. John's, Gander, and Deer Lake and Labrador left out of it one more time. So I'll put that out there for your consideration. All right, and we're still looking for an update exactly how much money is involved with the provincial government and PAL for that inter-island air loop. We don't have the numbers yet, but we'll get it to you as soon as we can. All right. We remember last year that Churchill Falls had to evacuate because of a wildfire. Lab City had to evacuate for the exact same reason. There are issues regarding preparedness for wildfire season, but the province is off to a rip-roaring start. So let's see here. As of Thursday, 58 reported wildfires so far in 2025. Last year in full, 96. So we know the wildfire season is around the end of April into September, Labrador mid-May into September, but off to a pretty early start. For the folks in Small Point, Broad Cove, Blackhead, Adams Cove, we've seen the pictures. It's hard to tell from photographs sometimes, but the flames looked like they were 150 feet high. Extraordinary. Then you had the foggy conditions, but kept the water bombers out for a while. Thankfully, a bit of rain has come to the region. But folks who had to evacuate, you hear some of their personal stories. Of course, they're terrified. And now they're also horrified, given the amount of structures that have been burnt to the ground. Rebuilding is going to be a massive challenge. So for those of you out there, if you'd like to share your personal story about watching the flames approach your community, then the evacuation, and then the devastating stories with all the homes that have been lost, happy to have you on the program. Happy to talk about what's happened to you and the challenges that lie ahead. But rebuilding is going to be extremely difficult for a variety of reasons, as I've heard from folks who have been impacted directly because of these wildfires. Extremely dry conditions. It was a very dry winter, so to speak, around here. Apparently that's the case for the bulk of the island in particular. So we do know, I know the conversation around the fifth water bomber, where should be stationed and all the rest of it. But the season's off to a pretty fiery start. So hopefully, just hopefully, we can stave off the worst. But if you would like to share your story here, please do exactly that. Anyway, we can stick with Labrador-related matters, and we can talk about the MOU for the Upper Churchill expansion, the Gull Island possibility, and the transmission projects, because that's a big one, as we're all aware. All right, let's keep going. So we see the stories in other parts of the country where they're talking about security at hospitals. We've also heard the stories here in this province with a variety of altercations, assaults and otherwise, whether it be patient on patient or visitor on visitor, whether it be staff. It's an issue. So apparently NL Health Services are looking at trying to put in some mechanisms to keep weapons out. So here we go. In Ontario, they put in artificial intelligence systems to identify guns or knives. As of this point, in just the first week of implementation at the University Hospital, 23 knives were confiscated. So, again, it's difficult to talk about these stories without coming across as, trying to fearmonger. But the reality is we've heard the stories here. So now NL Health Services try to get out in front of this, are talking about implementing some other physical security measures to keep people safe in the hospitals right across the province. It's unbelievable stories. And I know that the anxiety is amped up and people are worried and frustrated, and the wait times can indeed see people's emotions bubble over. But imagine we have to have these types of security measures, including artificial intelligence to identify guns and knives in a hospital, but that's coming apparently to the province in short order. All right, today, I don't know what time it is. So Premier Designate John Hogan will be sworn in as the 15th Premier of Newfoundland and Labrador. We've heard a couple of comments from Mr. Hogan about some of his priorities. Now, the opposition parties are not wrong when they say not much is going to change under a different leader, given that the government isn't changing hands and the faces aren't changing. We don't know who's going to be in John Hogan's cabinet, but the swearing-in ceremony happens this morning. As the listeners and potential callers, let's help set his agenda. So we've heard some very specific things. His background as a lawyer and the move towards what looks like definitive agreements regarding the Upper Churchill. He's spoken of that directly. He's also talked about the health accords several times. So we're 2 years in-ish on a 10-year roadmap. And he says that, this is the right path and we are probably ahead of schedule. I'm not so sure people of the province feel that where they live, but let's take it on. What we don't hear necessarily enough of, because the linchpin of the health accord is we can talk about doctor shortages and wait times and primary care teams and collaborative care, all the rest, all important. But we haven't heard very specific mentions of what is the key of the health accord, is as opposed to waiting for people to get sick to then help you, is the investment in or the spending in or the focus on the social determinants of health. That's the key for me. We can look at the plan or the pledge to have some 35 collaborative care clinics peppered around the island and into Labrador. Important. And it seems to be the go-to in every province across the country, talking about exactly that. But when we hear public policy, I think it would be helpful for people with a to give us, including me, a better understanding of the health accord is every step of the way for the various departments, when we see the budget line items come forward, talk about not only what it means for the impact in that specific department, but what it might mean for the future of healthcare. It's not money. If it was, we'd have it fixed in full. Some $4 billion in this province to service 545,000 people. It's not the money. There's something more to it that is complicating the world and those social determinants of health, and we know it to be true. The evidence is crystal clear. So I'd like to see public policy announcements have some direct mention to what it means for the impact on the healthcare system, because that's where we spend so much of the money. You want to take it on, we can do it. And with his justice background, he's former Minister of Justice as well, whether it be the promised expansion of the ankle bracelet program, whether it be anything inside the world of bail and bail reform and those types of things, let's set his agenda for him. Also, when it comes to something the Liberal government has been talking about, the implementation of community service to pay off your outstanding fines if you're unwilling or unable to pay them. I think that would be a big deal as well. Maybe we'll see some action on updating the operational standards inside the personal care homes based on the most recent Auditor General's report. Let's see. Drugs. It's hard to talk about it, but we see the stories, and this most recent drug bust regarding fentanyl in particular, they say they confiscated some 500 grams of fentanyl, enough to kill everyone on the Avalon, enough to kill people. 250,000 people could have been dead as a result. Here's some of the confiscation. 500 grams of fentanyl, more than 500 grams of methylfentanyl, 250 grams of fentanyl and other analogs used, including carfentanil and some other things I can't pronounce. Over 950 grams of cocaine, over 300 grams of crystal meth, over 2,000 prescription pills, and most of them I can't pronounce either. So there's, of course, firearms as part of this confiscation and other drug manufacturing equipment, the largest drug bust in the province's history. So they talk very specifically at this news conference about expanding the ability for law enforcement to identify who's in the drug trade here and the bust that we can see in the future. The quote's coming directly from Constable McNeil. We have doubled down on our drug initiatives here. We've bolstered our drug units in response to the demands that we're seeing. And as a result, there's a tremendous amount of covert and overt work being done. Seizures like this are happening. Smaller seizures are happening. Interventions, interdictions are happening. It's 15 times larger than any drug bust in the province's history. Fentanyl gets a lot of the attention, even though we hear from the Chief Medical Examiner's office that cocaine is the number one culprit when it comes to overdose deaths. But what we have not seen is, if you just take fentanyl, for example, because as we know, unfortunately, just one exposure to a minimal amount of fentanyl can stop you dead where you stand. The criminal justice system hasn't caught up here. You know, we do indeed have different classes of drugs regarding sentencing guidelines, but when these substances are so toxic, so addictive, so deadly, there probably needs to be some adjustments inside the criminal code. Now, if you're looking at your radio or your TV screen and saying, well, Paddy boy, I thought you said the war on drugs doesn't work. It didn't, and it doesn't. But sentencing still has to be appropriate to the level of crime committed. And this fentanyl story and what we see on our streets and what it means for our public safety and our interaction with criminal justice and what it means for the healthcare system, it's heartbreaking to say the very least. And on that front, regarding healthcare, I don't know how applicable this story is to this province, but it's about your medical data. We've had this conversation in the past, whether it be with some virtual care platforms, and I'm not, going to mention anything in particular because they all have different privacy policies, but the collection of our personal information regarding our health, regarding our medical information, it's probably important to ask, especially if you go to a private clinic, is exactly what the privacy policy is. Because they're selling the data. To who? Big Pharma, who is, or which is, an entity that's highly questionable at the very best of times, but with our personal information, whether it be the hacking of the Meditech system, whether it be the sale of your personal information to the big pharmaceutical companies, because there is no coincidence. When you go on your computer and you go to your Google machine, or you see the advertising banners on the side of your home pages, there's a reason why things that you deal with, things you interact with, things you buy, without telling Google, they know. And our personal privacy is being compromised all the time. Now, I'll have to admit, and big thanks to Brian Callahan for sitting in for me. I was busy, so I only heard very brief snippets of the show. Dave, was there much talk regarding the Prime Minister's meeting with the President a couple of days ago? So it's really indicative of where we are in the public discourse regarding politics. People had their impressions written before the meeting took place. Either he was steamrolled by the president, or he was very statesmanlike and he made the point, and whatever your takeaway is, we're happy to have it on the program here this morning. And in the world of politics, like I've been saying, especially during the federal election campaign, it was extremely difficult to understand what was real and what was not. And now there's a research co-authored by folks at Duke University, a bunch of what they call fact-checking media organizations, Snopes and others, Google, about the use of artificial intelligence and what it means for whether it be AI-generated images and deepfake videos and just the purposeful disinformation campaigns. Look, AI can be extremely beneficial, and even if you're not aware of it, much of what we see is indeed generated by artificial intelligence, and it comes with a variety of concerns, whether it be with the built-in bias. It's like everything else in this world. If you have garbage in, you get garbage out. So if the algorithms are biased, that's what you're going to get. It does indeed come with huge threats of data privacy, massive cybersecurity threats. The environmental impact is extraordinary, the amount of power required for these data centers, economic disruption, the potential for job losses, manipulation, and other existential risks associated with it. But how are we going to combat this? For folks listening to the program this morning that just want to know what the facts are, like Joe Friday, right? Just the facts, man. It's becoming harder and harder to come up with them. So if you want to take it on, let's go. And a couple of more quick ones before we get to you. And let me just say up front that I would have the exact same take on this next couple of stories, regardless of the party that we're talking about. Apparently, based on some polls, and you know my stance on the polls, I take them with a grain of salt, but a recent poll from Leger talking about faith in the election results is troubling. 13% of the electorate in this country don't believe the results, period. They feel hard done by, and they were hoping for another party to win, notably the Conservative Party of Canada. That is a huge problem. And most of it is based on nothing. So where do we go from here? And this is specifically about the Conservative Party of Canada. And again, if the Liberals were doing it, or the NDP were doing it, or the Bloc Québécois, I'd have the exact same thing to say. For the Conservative leadership, I know that this presents an opportunity to further bolster your base and to raise money. But the way they're going about it is just not right. So basically what they're saying is, the Liberals are fighting hard to tip the scales. The Liberals are working to flip enough seats to edge closer to a majority. We can't let that happen. They're trying to solicit donations saying, help us hold the line as the recounts play out. The direct insinuation is that don't trust the results. Elections Canada has a pretty tight rein on how the ballots are cast, how the ballots are counted, and the results to be posted. So when this is becoming an issue here, like it has been south of the border, it's not good for any of us. Because remember, into the future, the government will change hands from party to party. But these sentiments of not trusting results is going to be problematic into the future if we don't squash it exactly where it stands. Under the law of the country, recounts are automatically triggered when the difference in the number of votes received by the top finishing candidates is 0.1% or less of the total number of votes cast. Candidates, of course, can also request a judicial recount under very specific certain circumstances, but this is not great. It really isn't. You can be disgusted with results. And for others on the different side of the political spectrum, they might be disgusted with the results 4 years from now. But that sentiment of built-in distrust of Elections Canada, you can distrust the parties, you can distrust the politicians, but the integrity of the election is still there. We've got to accept the results, regardless if you're frustrated, angry, disgusted, or thrilled, because that is going to grow. You know full well it's going to. And last one, again, this is not about the person, nor is it about the party, but this is a problem. So I'm not going to give a whole lot of credence to the very loud vocal minority in Alberta or Quebec talking about separation. But the conversation continues. This should temper it somewhat. When questioned about the legislation tabled in the province of Alberta to lower the bar to trigger a referendum, Premier Smith said the quiet part out loud. It's about it's just about, more than anything else, the opportunity to keep another political rival out of the question. So she talks about the success of the Parti Québécois. And basically, she knows in her quiet moments that her motivation here is to make sure there's not another upstart party who would erode support for her party. The United Conservative Party, of course, the governing party in the province of Alberta. So if it's simply about a political tool, it's shameful. If it was about grievances that we can document, if it was about concerns with the East, if it was about abuse by Ottawa, those types of things, if they're based in fact, fair enough. But when she says it's as much about keeping a political rival party from being born in the province of Alberta, that's not fair to anybody in Alberta. And it's not a real part of the conversation in this country. If it's only about her political agenda, her party's political future, is that really acceptable? I don't think it is, because just look at it. I mean, it's really brought the conversation to we're almost at a crescendo in Alberta, but don't take it from me, take it from the Premier. And of course, whatever you want to talk about this morning, we can do it. A couple of very quick ones before we get to you. ECMA award winners from this province. Kelly Loader took home 2 fan-voted honours. She's the TD Fans' Choice Entertainer of the Year, Video of the Year for Can't Go Back. Rum Ragged won Traditional Release of the Year. Deantha Edmonds, of course, she's an Inuk soprano. She earned Indigenous Artist of the Year. The Ennis Sisters, lovely, love them. Also recognised with the Dr. Helen Crichton Lifetime Achievement Award. Congratulations to all hands. There'll be more awards presented Sunday night. The Music and Industry Awards at the Jag Soundhouse. Hanging over all of this is the passing of co-founder of the Shanneyganock, Mark Hiscock. So I was shocked and deeply saddened to hear of his passing a couple of days ago. At the age of 53. Mark was a friend of mine. I've known Mark for decades. He was a terrific musician. He was a big part of the music community in this province, and gone far too soon. So Chris Andrews, his friend and co-bandmate, is here in the building this morning, and he was on with the VOC Morning Show. A lot of people were really hit hard with this particular story, and my deepest condolences to his friends and his family and his bandmates. He was beloved for all the right reasons, and shocked and sad to hear of his passing. All right. A little brighter note. It's Mother's Day on Sunday, so I won't get a chance to wish the mothers out there happy Mother's Day, other than right here this morning. So for my mom and my wife and my sisters and all my friends and all you mothers out there, hope you have the opportunity to spend some time with your family on this Sunday, and happy Mother's Day to you. We're on Twitter. We're VOCM Open Line. Follow us there. Email address is openline@vocm.com. When we come back, let's have a great show to wrap up the week. That means you're in the queue to talk about whatever's on your mind. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Beginning on line number 2. Paul, you're on the air.
Good morning. How are you doing today?
Not too bad. How about you?
Oh, I'm okay. First off, I myself am not happy with the results of the elections, but it was done by Elections Canada, and there are so many fake rumors going on around the whole Elections Canada thing, mostly by people who have no idea as to how the system even works. I've worked as a scrutineer for candidates for many, many years. I've worked with elections, for Elections Canada on Election Day, and one of the biggest things that I see in the conspiracies was that they only provide pencils. What's to stop somebody from erasing your X on the ballot and putting an X in a different spot? And people are saying, oh, you should take a pen. Do you know why Elections Canada uses pencils?
I do. There's a bunch of reasons, actually. Number one...
The biggest reason?
Okay, go ahead.
The biggest reason is you can take a pencil and you can store it for 5 years and it's still going to work.
Exactly. I was going to say ink pens can dry up. Yeah. I mean, the pen can dry out. The ink can just leak. There's a bunch of reasons, but number one is the reliability of a pencil to be stored year after year after year. 100% right. And people can use a pen if they want.
It doesn't fail. Sure. And then you got these people who are saying, oh, if you mark it with a pen, they're not going to count it. Which, once again, is garbage. That is totally untrue. But they're promoting these things. And then I watched a lot of videos where people were posting pictures or videos. They say, look, here's an Elections Canada worker taking his ballot box home. Here in Ontario, the polls opened at 9:30. The polls had to be set up at 8:30. Or you had to be there at 8:30 to start setting up the polls. In any major center, you could easily have a few hundred individual polling tables, like the actual ballot box, one for each individual little poll within that riding. You cannot have a couple of hundred people lined up at the local Elections Canada office at early in the morning waiting to pick up these supplies. So, yes, they're taken home the night before. But what people don't realize is the box isn't even assembled at that point. Okay? So you take this equipment home. You're at the polling station an hour before the poll opens. At that point, you're going to take that flat piece of cardboard, and if people are panicking that some poll worker had a polling box, what about when it came out of the printers? You're going to take that flat piece of cardboard, fold it out until it forms a box, and then you're going to take a seal and you're going to put it along each edge of the box. Any place where there's an opening, you're going to put a seal along there. And those seals are numbered. And there is a record of seals that they have to fill out. They say, this seal went on this location, this seal went on this location, this seal went on this location. They record the number, and then they sign their name across that seal.
And it's more than one signature, Paul, to make sure that that seal is verified. So the deputy returning officer seals the box, signs it, poll clerk, poll supervisor, any party can put forward a scrutineer at that moment in time at the end of the advance polls. They all sign the seal. Those boxes are not compromised. It's virtually impossible.
Exactly. And people are going on about, they took these boxes home or they were in a different location. This is garbage because, like you say, the last seals that go on are when they seal the top, and any scrutineer from any candidate can be in there before the poll opens. Like I say, here in Ontario, it was 9:30. If a scrutineer is there at 9 o'clock, he can observe them sealing the top of the box. He looks inside and says, yes, the box is empty. They close it down. They seal it up. And like you say, even the scrutineers from the parties can sign that thing. Some of these polls that were, like for the advance polls, a seal was put across the top of the slot at the end of the poll. The poll closes, they put a seal across the top, and once again, it is signed, it is recorded, there's witnesses to it. All this, and people are saying, they're taking these boxes, they're not secure. All these have records of the seal number and signatures on them. That's number one. Now, number two, this whole thing about the pen versus pencil. Like I said, the pencils are only there because they do not dry out and fail. You can store them for all these years. You want to use a pen, that's fine. You take a pen with you and you mark your X. Plain and simple. Now, I saw one where this guy was saying, the ballot was folded up. When you unfold it, there's what appears to be a mark next to in that case, because of his political view, there's an X, very faintly next to the Liberal name. If the idiot that was complaining about this had to flip the ballot over, he would see that if there's a mark on there, it's because the DRO signed the back of it and put the poll number on it, and maybe he pressed a little bit harder sometimes than others, so it may be just an impression coming through. It is not that somebody put an X on it. Now, come the time when they're going to count those ballots, and I'll tell you, those ballot boxes were full this time around. They were, right up to the very top. They open up these boxes on cue, especially now with the advanced polls. They start counting ahead of time because of the extremely high turnout. So everybody goes into the room. Everybody's, you've got witnesses paid for by Elections Canada. You got your DRO. You got your information officer. You've got all these people in there that are going to start counting these ballots. If anybody thinks that when you're looking at a couple of thousand ballots, that somebody is going to be able to pull that ballot out, look at it, and erase it and change it to a different thing with everybody watching, there's no way. Elections Canada is very secure.
I agree. There's a couple of interesting things about counting the votes this time. The chief electoral officer has some flexibility. So, generally speaking, in years past, you could begin counting the advanced polls 1 hour before the polls close. This year,
in a sealed room.
In a sealed room, all the same scrutineers take place here. But also, this year they changed it 2 hours before the polls closed. Why? Because 7.3 million Canadians voted. In Carleton, specifically, in Mr. Poilievre's federal riding, because of the 91 candidates on the ballot, the chief electoral officer allowed for 6 hours before the polls closed to count ballots in that riding, to give time for it to be done accurately, fairly, and to be reported in a timely fashion. So some of those things took place based on reality on the ground. But I'm glad, and I know we've spoken in the past, Paul, I know you're extremely frustrated with the results, but I'm really pleased that you're chiming in about the integrity of the election, because if we see those numbers grow from 13%, don't trust the results. If that becomes 20 and then it becomes 30, all of a sudden we have a problem that you cannot stuff that genie back in the bottle. We have to do our best to make sure people understand.
Then you got the whole January 6th thing out of the U.S.
It can be a problem before we know it, and we can't afford it, and it's completely unnecessary. Really appreciate you doing this morning, Paul. Thanks a lot.
Can I add one more thing?
Sure.
The only real concern that I have is for a registration officer, when they come in, it's very clear as to what ID is required in order. If your name isn't on the list, you can have it put on the list the day of the election through the registration officer. You require the exact same ID as you do if anybody is just voting and their name is on the list. We're talking now people are voting, their name isn't on the list. The only concern that I have, and to be quite honest, it's kind of minor, because you can register the day with an address and an ID that shows where you live, but you do not have to provide proof of Canadian citizenship. When the person goes to the registration officer and signs their name, they are saying that, yes, I am an eligible voter in this riding, but they don't have to they don't have to say that they are a Canadian citizen, that they are eligible to vote. And that's the only thing that I have an issue with. However, as a scrutineer or as an election worker, whichever it is, if somebody is there that is entitled to cast a ballot, I want to see them being able to cast that ballot, and I want to see if there is a very clear indication on that ballot of who they want to vote for. I believe the ballot should be counted. There was ones that, for the other party that their scrutineers, they say, oh, yeah, that's acceptable because they circled the name instead. There was a clear indication as to who they were voting for.
Absolutely.
But when the same thing happened to my candidate, then all of a sudden they objected to it.
Well,
Anyways,
that's the hypocrisy of the electorate, which is it's growing, and it's a problem, and it really is going to be into the future unless we get back to what's real and what's not, and to be able to acknowledge and to accept results whether or not we like them, or appreciate them, or loathe them. Paul, I appreciate your time. Thanks for the call.
There's other ways of interfering with an election, and Elections Canada is very secure.
Good man. Thanks for the call.
You have a great day.
You too, Paul. Bye-bye. And that's a staunch conservative view, which I think is most welcome commentary, because this is a bigger deal than people give it. We just take for granted here, and times are changing, and we can't allow that change to overwhelm a certain percentage of the electorate. Let's take a break. When we come back, we'll talk about government procurement and whatever you want to talk about. Don't go away. Suppose I should press the button. Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number one. Say good morning to the PC member for CBS. He's the House Leader, Management Commission, Health, Infrastructure, Public Procurement, Shadow Minister of Infrastructure. Very pedant. Let's go. Barry, you're on the air.
Good morning, Paddy. Yes, it's a mouthful, isn't it?
It is so.
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity, Paddy. I just wanted to touch on his release, actually, I just felt this morning. And it prompted me, I guess, Minister Hutton's commentary on the HMP replacement. His recent commentary is going to be another announcement in another couple of weeks' time. And I got to thinking, I said, how many more announcements are we going to hear? I know that myself and you have spoke about this penitentiary replacement, the procurement issue, about the retendering, the initial bids that went in. There was bidders that were refusing to bid because of they felt it was an unfair playing field. I mean, this goes back several years. And, in my role as infrastructure critic, of course, justice has been tied to this as well. I mean, I know that Minister Hogan, or today, well, Premier Hogan now, I suppose, shortly, announced 2022 that they're looking forward to starting and completion in 24. I believe then there was recently money come from the federal government that the current minister just didn't know that was in. They didn't know where they had it, or was discovered that it was there. Funding that was there since 2023. I guess, Teddy, that what prompts this sort of concern is. What's the hold up? What's going on here? Because I know, and I mean, I'll speak for a lot of people when I say it. There's a lot of general public that really are not too concerned if you replace the penitentiary, because they look at it from, why would you? Because, I mean, you're dealing with inmates, what have you. And I hear that often. But I think that's probably in the civilized world, that's probably not the right answer. Everyone, rehabilitation is part of our correction system, and it's about getting, it's not about throwing them in there forever. It's about rehabilitation is a minimum security penitentiary. But more importantly, too, Paddy, and not equally important, we have staff. We have staff that work in that building down there. I mean, I toured that facility numerous years ago, and I worked with former Minister of Justice back probably 10 years back. It was atrocious back then. And from what I've gathered, it's not gotten any better. So here we go. Time, year after year goes on, and there's more announcements and more photo ops and more promises. But there's no action, and it's like, when did these? And I have people. I know people who work at that building, and they tell me. I mean, I hear people that's inmates that call your program. I hear judges that shorten sentences because of the conditions at the penitentiary. This is a growing issue. It's a big issue anyway. It's getting bigger every day. But yet we find government are going to drag us along. They're going to have another announcement next week. And they already retendered it because they come back and we know the price of the bill is atrocious. It's gone way above. So every day goes on now, the cost has gone up. And what, are we going to get another announcement tell us that we'll find something to fall? Or look, I'm at a loss. And I think that the general public, when you talk to people, and I think it's a fair question, is what's the delay? Now this morning we may get a new minister. And Lord knows, the new minister comes in, everything was delayed again. So it's just one of them things is this ever going to happen? And I think it's a fair question.
I agree. Just to pick up on a couple of points you made. So for folks who think, who cares about the prisoner population? They committed the crime, they do the time, hard time or otherwise. Okay, to pick up on that, you made a key point here for folks who don't care about the replacement of the penitentiary. Judges are softening sentences because of the conditions. What we used to see when, if you're in prison and you were denied bail and eventually convicted and you got credit for time and a half for time served, now we're giving credit for double time. So for the tough on crime crowd out there who don't care about spending money on the penitentiary, you're actually against your own self-interest. They're giving softer sentences, they're getting out of prison earlier, they're getting double time credit for what used to be time and a half. Why? Simply because of the conditions at the pen. So that's not good for anybody. It's not good for the inmate, it's not good for the staff, it's not good for their families, and it's not good for public safety. If that's your primary concern, the conditions at the pen absolutely have a direct link with public safety. If convicted criminals are getting out earlier simply because of how atrocious it is inside the walls of that pen. So every reason in the world why 25 years ago that should have been replaced. There's an argument to be made it should have been replaced 40 years ago. We should have never added on the new section. We should have built a new prison decades ago. And here we are now. So you cannot care about the prisoners. But the folks that you say you don't care about, they're getting out earlier because of the pen.
Yeah, absolutely, Paddy. And you're right. I mean, I heard actually built into my release. I was listening the other day actually in the news, and that's what the judge was based on, the case of penitentiary and all this combined. I was like, you start shaking your head. But and another, when you look at the procurement piece, which infrastructure falls under me, of course, the cost has gone up every day delayed in this environment. And you talk to anyone out there in the construction field, and again, something you talked about, the cost has gone up, I think, if I was guessing in the last 2 or 3 years, probably even a couple $100 million. I know that when they first come out with it, was is double, I think, over double from what their initial estimates were some 6-7 years ago, or whatever, when they initially budgeted and announced this to be done, the most recent incarnation. So, like, every day goes by again, the cost is up. So who wins there? I mean, that affects every citizen in the province, the public purse. I mean, I say it's our money. I always say that. And so every day goes on, it's costing us more. Our streets are not as safe because people are getting, they're putting people on the streets earlier because of the conditions at the penitentiary. Staff are suffering. I mean, professionals go in there to provide rehabilitation, and that's part of our correction system. A good penitentiary, we all benefit by it because good programming should lead to a better society. I mean, that's the whole intended goal. They're not meant to stay keeping it the rest of their life. They're meant to go in there and get meaningful rehabilitation, get on the streets, live a meaningful life. And if they live a meaningful life, it makes a better life for all of us out there, everyday people, trying to live our lives in a civil, law-abiding manner. And hopefully they will too, with the right of rehabilitation. But you can't get the rehabilitation in that facility that's sitting down by the lake now. It's deplorable. And like I said, it was deplorable. It was 25 years ago, should have been rebuilt. I visited, I think it was 10, 11, probably even 12 years back, and it was unbelievable. It was unbelievable. The conditions of people working, it was atrocious. And I think that, the minister's got to stop at these announcements and pictures and give you the false illusion that they're doing something. I really think action needs to happen. And I mean, this needs to be done sooner than later because we'll all benefit financially and from our society as a whole.
I appreciate the time, Barry. Thanks for the call.
Thanks, Paddy.
All the best.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
That's Barry Petton, of course, PC member, CBS, Shadow Minister Infrastructure, and we can pick up on that. And a couple of emails saying as to why I didn't mention this or why I didn't mention that, which happens all the time, and that's fine by me, is that, yes, there has been a new pope elected by the conclave, which is a pretty fascinating exercise, and it's the first American-born pope, Pope Leo XIV. A couple of interesting things. You'll hear it celebrated in some corners of the United States, but of course he's spent a lot of his adult life in Peru. He's a dual citizen, so he's American and Peruvian. And, people say he was a woke Marxist pope and all that kind of stuff you hear all the time. He does have some pretty progressive views. Talk about Holy Communion for divorced couples, talk about blessings for same-sex marriages, those types of things. So I didn't not mention it on purpose. So yes, an American-born man is now the new leader of the Catholic Church and the 1.6 billion Catholics on the planet. So Pope Leo XIV. I don't know what's his actual name. It's Robert Provo, right? Did I get that right? I want to make sure I don't mess that up. It's Robert Francis Prevost, 69 years of age. Let's go ahead and take a break. Don't go away. Welcome back. Richard Didham is a director with the Salmon Air Conservation Trust and joins us on line number 3. Good morning, Richard. You're on the air.
Good morning, Paddy. How are you?
Very well, thanks. How about you?
I understand you had a birthday the other day.
I did, yeah, the 1st of May.
6th? Was it the 6th?
The 1st for me, my son Jax was the 7th. That's why I was away. I went out to spend his birthday with him.
Okay, mine was the 5th. I figured we'd had something in common. But anyway.
Happy belated or belated happy birthday.
How old are you?
Thank you. I'm 56.
Yeah, and I'm 79. How about that now? Anyway, Paddy, I wanted to talk about the WEWAC crowd and so on. We escaped yesterday, no loss of life, thank God. And I'm feeling sorry for the people who lost their homes and everything there. This terrible thing.
It really is.
Paddy, had that happened in the Colonnade watershed, around Colonnade Pond or the Ripple Pond or Big Pond or somewhere around there, the Colonnade watershed, lives would have been lost. Deer Park, Midland Road, Mars, Ocean Pond, Middle Gulf Pond, Vickers, all those areas. Now, I was in Hawaii, so I know what the forests are like there. The fire in Hawaii traveled a mile a minute. That's 60 miles an hour. From Colonnade Pond or Ripple Pond or anywhere, there's not 60 miles. If you went to Transcanada, out Whitburn Road, through Con and so on, there's not 60 miles. So within 1 hour, that fire's on your doorstep. Where are you going to go with all the road network is in the Deer Park and in these like Middle Gulf Pond and Mars and so on? Where are you going to run to? These people were on the main road with their homes. They just made it. A lot of them almost lost their lives. So we got to look at what WERAC is doing. I think that this situation should be taken out of MUN's hands and passed over to Corner Brook to professions, where they got a college there that teaches forest management, good forest management. They had the gall to get into a helicopter, the staff, we got into a helicopter, flew to Ripple Pond. This is fact because I got an email on this. Flew to the Ripple Pond, got out, did an assessment, looked at the debris on the ground, and declared that this was not a fire threat. Not a fire threat. Can you imagine that? These people determining that. There was nobody on board from Corner Brook, nobody on board from Paddy's Pond, professionals. And these are making decisions like this. It's ridiculous. This got to be taken away from MUN and passed over to the people, the professionals at Corner Brook or someone like that to make decisions on what's safe, what's the best thing to do. And we need our forests cleaned up, and it has to start somewhere. Why not start now? Now, we're not into July and August yet, and we have 5 or 6 fires already. What's it going to be like? We're in danger. This is a danger. They're playing with fire, and it's dangerous. I don't want to see people lose. So we could be talking about people who lost their lives today because of its forest fires.
Absolutely.
It's ridiculous.
There's actually been 58 reported wildfires so far this year. And I mean, here we are on the 9th of May. So it's been a very active season so far. The point you're making, though, Richard, I think doesn't get enough attention. Because we talk about the number of fires, we talk about the number of water bombers, we talk about fighting the fires and evacuations and the homes that are burnt. But what I don't know enough about is exactly what processes are in place to try to prevent the max or try to minimize the damage. Whether it be, like, I think Lab City and Churchill Falls last year, the leaders won't say it out loud, but there's a real growing sentiment that the work was not done, whether it be creating the fire breaks around community to try to protect the community, whether it be a formal process in place to go into the woods, do the hard work with the chainsaws and the trucks and the loaders, and cut all the fire load, all the windfall, get it out of there as best possible. I know it's a massive island. I mean, I think Newfoundland itself is the 14th largest island in the world, and into Labrador, the expansive Labrador makes some of that fire load work very difficult. But I don't even know what the formal process is, because it should be something that we focus on. We would minimize some of the risk to the community if we did a better job in preparing for what is inevitably going to be an active fire season.
You're 100% right, Patty. In Spain now, they have wild horses, herds of wild horses that they protect. You know why they protect them? I saw it on TV a short while ago. They're protected because they clean up the debris under the trees to prevent forest fires. Fires don't start, and this is what they're having trouble getting through their heads. Fires don't start at the tops of the trees. Fires start at the bottom, where you got kindling. And all you need is spark, and you've got a fire. It's out of control. God help us if it happens in there where they this protected area. It has to be cleaned up. And to clean it up, you get contractors go in there. Now, there's some of it done. Here on, if you ever get a chance to come in, I'll take you there. Here in Colnet, they did a project there where they clear cut it and cleaned up the forest and replanted it. That is worth looking at. We get over a foot of growth every year. So in 10 years, you get a tree that's 15 feet high. What's wrong with that? I mean, that's good management. But with that, and that's our problem. We've got people saying, "No, don't touch that." Let the debris in that Ripple Pond go back into nature. Let it rot and go back into nature. Don't clean it up. There's not a fire threat.
Yeah.
And these are people, the staff of WERAC. Can you imagine making decisions like that? It's crazy.
It's really interesting, John, that you mentioned the wild horse in Spain. So they actually formally and on purpose reintroduced those, I think they're called Zawalski horses, in a variety of regions in Spain. And what they eat is the gorse. Like if you ever watched the British Open on television, you see the gorse alongside of the fairways. Those wild horses eat the gorse, which is highly flammable, and it's everywhere on the Iberian Peninsula. So the government on purpose reintroduced those horses for that exact reason. I'm really interested that you mentioned that.
Yeah, but see, there's always a solution to a problem. If you take your time and figure it out. That's the way I look at things anyway. Take time, but it's going to take a long time to clean up the forest, but we got to start somewhere. Otherwise, people are going to lose their lives. It's as simple as that. If that fire started County Watershed, there's no way that people get out of Deer Park or Bimlin Road or any of those communities there. Where are you going to go? Sure, on the main road, there in that cove where the fire was, sure, people were running in their vehicles. Now, 60 miles an hour, the fire is traveling 60 miles an hour, and you haven't got much time.
No, it was on top of them in a heartbeat. Some of the stories I've heard being told by folks impacted are really quite scary. Richard, I'm glad you called this morning. Anything else you'd like to say?
No, Paddy boy, that's about it. Just, I'm sorry, yes, I do. I last time I was talking to you, my phone went dead, and you mentioned Sandy Roach. I knew Sandy well. Last time I had contact with him, he called me. He said, "Can you get me a brace of rabbits?" I said, "Sandy, no problem with that." I said, "I'll get you a brace of rabbits." So I got the rabbits from him, cleaned them, bagged them, and I didn't freeze them. I called him and said, "Come on in, pick them up." Well, I didn't realize at that time that he was sick. He was having trouble then. But anyway, he was a fine fella, a wild-spoken, quiet man. And his sister, did you know his sister Anne?
Oh, yes, I'm good friends with the family.
Oh, well, her grandson is a good hockey player.
Yeah, young Alex. As a matter of fact, that family, they live on my street. Myself and Alex's father, Sean, we've been friends since we were kids. So, yeah, we all played hockey growing up together.
They got good neighbours, that's the main thing.
Exactly right. Richard, thanks for the call this morning.
Well, that's it.
All the best. You just mentioned his phone went dead. I think it went dead again. Anyway, hopefully Richard got his final thought out. Let's go ahead and take a break for the news. When we come back, Barry Mackenzie's in the queue. He's a royal historian. So we know there's been some consternation in some corners about the invitation of King Charles III to read the speech from the throne as the sovereign head of state. There's questions about the role of the monarchy into the future, and we can take on the historical context as well when we speak with Barry right after this. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number one and say good morning to a royal historian. That's Barry Mackenzie. Good morning, Barry. You're on the air.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm very well. Thanks for asking. How about you?
Just great, thanks.
So it's really quite fascinating. Usually the speech from the throne is delivered by the Governor-General. In this case, right now, it's Mary Simon. But the Prime Minister has invited King Charles III to deliver the speech. Your initial thoughts?
I mean, I think we're seeing it's an historic moment in and of itself, of course. We haven't seen this happen since 1977, and before that it had only happened on one other occasion in 1957. So it's significant because it doesn't happen very often. But I think, in light of events in terms of international relations between Canada and the U.S. and all that's sort of coming out of the White House, I think there's a significant message being sent here, both in Mr. Carney's invitation to the King to read the speech from the throne as a reminder that Canada is a sovereign nation and that the King is our sovereign, something that the current president seems to respect a bit more than just elected officials, and also that that Canada's not for sale. So I think it's a significant message that's being delivered, and I hope that it's going to do exactly the trick that the Prime Minister is hoping it will.
Before we get into King Charles and his current reign, let's talk about Queen Elizabeth II. Of course, she became the Queen in, I think it was February 1952, if I'm not mistaken, so she would have been the one to deliver that speech from the throne, but really felt to monarchists around the world that she was the glue that held the family together. Whether we talk about Fergie and the death of Diana and then the marriage with the Camilla Bowles and Harry's episodes and a lot of things that provided huge family issues for any family to endure, and she was able to weather the storm. Do you think Charles will be able to pick up where she left off, because she really did feel like, as I said, the glue that held the family together and consequently held the role of the monarchy together?
Yeah, no, and I think so. And this wasn't the first time we saw this sort of thing happen. If you look at the reign of her second great grandmother, Queen Victoria, in the 19th century, she came along after a series of, shall we say, problematic uncles had held the throne, for 17 years. Her grandfather before that had suffered from mental illness and had really been out of the picture for much of the last decade of his life. And so the family very much seemed to be falling apart. And then you had this woman who could weather the storm despite all issues with her own children. Again, this is 150 years ago. So it's not unusual, I suppose. And we got so used to having the Queen around for so long that she became such a figure of continuity in our own lives that I think it became hard for us to imagine what it could possibly be like. Could anyone keep things going? And I think that His Majesty is showing that he is, he's very capable of continuing to do that. Yet the family issues seem to continue to be percolating, as we see with Harry. But I think the King is demonstrating to people that he's willing, particularly at his age, he's willing to put in the work. Camilla is by his side, and even in the more serious parts of his illness, she was out there on her own doing her thing. So I think the anticipation that a lot of people felt about what was going to happen when the time came and the Queen was no longer in the picture, I think that's been a lot. It's been proven to be sort of worry over a lot of nothing, I think. So the King has every right to be pleased, I think, with how the first couple of years have gone.
For some reason, someone sent me out of nowhere a video of, let's see, 1957. It was the first time a monarch had been seen on television. She brought a Christmas address from Sandringham. Someone sent me that video for whatever reason a few days ago, which I actually watched, and it was fascinating. So inside the family itself, help us understand exactly what the future holds for Harry. Because, of course, very public spats with the family and his want of being out of the monarchical roles that he once held. So what should we take away from that?
I don't know. It's a really tough one to predict. What we've seen in the last number of years since all of that began to unravel is that we kept thinking we knew what might happen next, and they kept surprising us. So with their continued desire to be media darlings, while also somehow being separated from the role that Harry was born to, it's difficult to say what direction they're going to take next. I can't imagine a future in which we'll see Harry back in the royal fold and taking on royal duties. I just don't see how the trust could possibly be rebuilt there. And I wonder if eventually the public's fascination with them will wane to such an extent that they'll sort of become these, shadowy figures like the Duke and Duchess of Windsor became in the 1950s and 60s. Certainly they remained in the public eye for a while, but after a while, people began to realize that there's more value in the commitment, in the sense of duty that we saw as we saw with King George VI, and now we're seeing with the current Prince of Wales. I think people see that there's more value in that than the sort of weird Hollywood factor that we're seeing with Harry and Meghan at the moment.
Because it very much feels like a Hollywood saga unfolding, and it still hasn't unfolded in full. Just on Camilla Parker Bowles. So, Princess Diana, needless to say, was internationally beloved. And then upon her tragic demise, which I remember quite clearly, then of course Camilla. So Prince Philip, the longest serving consort in history, has the public embraced Camilla Parker Bowles? Because upon the renewal of their love affair between Charles and Camilla, there was a lot of consternation and negative pushback amongst the British people in particular. Where does it stand today, in your opinion?
I think in the UK in particular, she's become a favorite. Over time, I liken this to another anchor I was talking to earlier in the week. We all have sort of in-laws and outlaws, or second spouses or partners of cousins and siblings and so on, and it can be difficult at the beginning to accept that because we're still rather attached to the original partner. And then over time, I think most people have recognized that not only does the Queen work hard, but she's also made the King very happy. And despite the fact that they, yes, indeed, made choices that they shouldn't have made while the King and she were married to other people, I think people have recognized that the level of happiness that they bring to one another and the great partnership that they've created is worth a lot more. And there will always be people who will continue to write her off simply because of all of that. And that's certainly their prerogative. But I think in large part, people have recognized that she stepped up. She's made the King very happy, and that she's an incredibly hard worker out there doing a role to which she was not born and which I don't think she ever aspired to in that sense, but is handling masterfully. So I think it's been a generally positive PR evolution.
It's amazing to me how much focus is attributed to the spouses of members of the royal family. So, for instance, Catherine. So Kate Middleton undergoing the health concerns that she had, and the British tabloids are notably vicious towards anybody, including the monarchs. So what do you make of how the family is covered? It used to be very revered, even though there's a very dodgy history associated with many actions on behalf of the royal family. But how do you, whether it be Meghan Markle, whether it be Kate Middleton and others, it's remarkable to me that their royal spouses don't get near as much attention as they do.
Yeah, no, it is curious, and I think there's a gendered element to all of that too. I think the press always has unless a male member of the family is particularly dramatic, there's the fascination that seems to surround women who marry into the family. There are historians who have studied this type of thing and looked at how that affects the sort of coverage, and it can often, as we saw in the case with Meghan, it can get quite nasty. But it's a very curious sort of thing, and perhaps it's because those who marry into the family have backstories, and we often know almost nothing about the behind-the-scenes lives. At least we didn't until more recent decades. Nothing about the behind-the-scenes lives of the members of the family themselves, because they try to be as run-of-the-mill, middle-of-the-road as possible. But with people that marry in, of course, there's the backstory, there's the old boyfriends, there's the life experiences, there's the and we in the most tragic sense, watched with Diana the fact that she wasn't ready for that kind of transition to this lifestyle that perhaps her family and the royal family thought she was, and it's a really disturbing element, I guess, of human nature that we sort of like to see people flounder a little bit. And so I think when that was all happening, admittedly, the public was on the side of the Princess of Wales for most of the time, but it's a perverse sort of sense of fascination, I think, with these things that is really unfortunate. I mean, we need people to find the monarchy significant enough to pay attention to it, but when it reaches that sort of level of almost a perverse interest, then of course it becomes problematic, and we see what the fallout is of that, and most members of the family have felt that at one time or another.
When you say the word perverse, it makes me think of Andrew. So,
yeah, well, that's a whole other story, isn't it?
The allegations against Prince Andrew are extraordinarily troubling, but the family has been able to somehow navigate those choppy waters. I know they very quickly alienated Andrew, but to me, the allegations and what that means for the family at large has not really hurt the family as much as it's hurt Andrew on a standalone basis. How have they been able to navigate that? Because for many families, once those allegations come forward, that's a broad, nasty black stroke for all.
Yeah, no, it is. It's a very curious business, and I mean, it's the allegations are disturbing to an extreme degree.
Yeah.
And so, no, it's remarkable, I guess, that they've weathered that storm, and I think it's the fact that they continually demonstrate, I think, to people that they're there. They show up every day and they do their thing, and they do what's expected of them, and that's helped the family weather the storm over centuries. I mean, we've seen this scandal was certainly in the extreme, but we've seen other instances of not so, some pretty unsavory behavior by members of the family or extended relatives and that sort of thing, and remarkably, the institution sort of continues to sort of chug along, and I suppose that's and hopefully that's human nature to realize that that one bad apple doesn't spoil the whole cart, but it's been remarkable that they've and I know they've done things very consciously to make sure to sort of distance themselves in whatever way possible from that particular story, while also not trying to stifle it. I mean, the justice has to be served. So it's a curious thing, and we certainly haven't heard the end of it, I don't think, by any stretch of the imagination.
The future of the monarchy is an interesting conversation. Several Caribbean nations have said they're moving away from the British monarchy. Some are actually pursuing republicanism. So the question will remain in this country. Year over year, it seems that the want for the monarchy to play a formal role in Canada's, whether it be government and or in societal relations, seems to be waning. Your thoughts into the future? Because people say it's time for the monarchy to go. The monarchy's role is enshrined in the 1982 Constitution. Even to remove the monarchy requires consent in Parliament, consent in the Senate, and every single province. And many provinces will never go down that path. What do you see as the future?
It's difficult to say. It really is. And I mean, I obviously, as a monarchist as well as a royal historian, I hope that there's a long, rich future ahead. I think it's in instances like these, with the invitation of the King to read this speech from the throne, that I hope Canadians recognize why it's there. It's one of those things. A friend recently told me that his father used to refer to the monarchy as a frame on a picture. It held everything together. Nobody thinks about the frame. The frame is there. We typically focus on the picture, on the brush strokes, on the skill of the artist, but the frame is what holds that all together. So I thank John Pidnicki for sharing that with me recently, and I think it's marvelous because we take it for granted it's there. It's how the system functions. It is the basis of our constitutional framework, and every so often, we recognize how important that frame is in holding things all together. And I think the soft power that we're seeing in not just the invitation by the Prime Minister, but the willingness of the King, who, of course, as the constitutional sovereign of several different nations, including the UK, whose Prime Minister has taken a somewhat different approach to all of this business with the American president. He's treading, in some ways, a difficult tightrope there, because he's bound by the advice of these individual chief ministers, and here he is accepting that invitation, coming to Canada to read that speech from the throne, which we can only interpret, pretty broadly as a major reaction to what's happening in terms of Canadian-American relations. So I hope this demonstrates to Canadians why this institution has value, and how we can, how using the symbols of our heritage and our government can help, bring Canadians together in a way that an elected official just can't at this point. So I hope that we benefit from this.
Yeah, people bemoan the cost of the visit, security and associated costs. But just sit back and think about it. Even if you're anti-monarchy, just imagine the bill for removing the monarchy from Canadian life, whether it be in the military, whether it be in every single government document, in every single province, and in Ottawa. We would be talking hundreds of millions of dollars. So your worries about security costs are dwarfed by the bill that it would cost to actually financially remove the monarchy from our role, not to mention the actual formal role it plays in the Westminster style of Parliament. Anything else this morning, Barry?
Exactly. No, well, I think I'll just add on to that, really. We talk about cost, and that's something that it's a legitimate concern.
Sure.
We live in austere times. There's no question about it. But removing one institution and replacing it with something else does not necessarily save money. The Monarchist League has been commissioning a study every 3 years on the cost of the institution and comparing it to other things. The Supreme Court of Canada, the Library of Parliament costs Canadians more money than the monarchy sometimes. So, there are expenses, and if we replace this with a presidential-style system, the president still needs security. None of these bills go away with the change in institutions. So if Canada comes to a point where it feels like it has to make the decision to become a republic or to adopt a different type of government, it can't be for money. That's not why we make change. If we're going to change the very basis of who we are as a parliamentary democracy, then it has to be for different reasons. And that day may come, but in any case, I'll be prepared to debate to my dying breath should it come to that point. But it's always a pleasure to chat about these things, and I hope people have their eyes peeled later this month when the speech is read.
I certainly appreciate your time this morning, Barry. Thank you.
Always a pleasure.
My pleasure. All the best. Bye-bye.
Take care.
That's Royal Historian Barry McKenzie. And your thoughts on the monarchy are also welcome on the show, whether it be in line with Barry's or otherwise. Let's take a break. When we come back, we're talking emergency preparedness. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Went a little bit long with Mr. McKenzie, so we're going to get a quick one here before we come back for a conversation about the need for the Canadian economy to, I hate the word, but to pivot to a keen focus on the need for innovation. But before we get to Mr. Bergen on line one, we're going to go to line number 4. Good morning, Samantha Baker. You're on the air.
Hello, how are you?
I'm very well. How about you?
Good, thank you.
Good.
Sorry, I was kind of contacted just to do a little bit of an interview in regards to my daughter. So I'm actually from Alberta. My husband and his family are from Newfoundland. And I don't know, we're talking about Amelia and her little drive that we're doing, her little fundraiser.
Yeah, I want to hear about it. So tell us about Amelia before we get into the fundraiser, what you're doing.
For sure. So Amelia will be actually 4 tomorrow. And while I was pregnant, she suffered from a stroke while in utero. So basically that did cause brain damage. And she was diagnosed with cerebral palsy and then later epilepsy. So basically what that does is it kind of affects the left side of her body. Just everyday activities that we generally take for granted are extremely difficult for her. So walking, sit to stand, any kind of gross or fine motor skills are extremely hard for her. So what that involves is a lot of therapy and a lot of support from us. and that's why I'm here.
She's a beautiful little girl. So in an effort to go through this fundraiser, and I know you've got a lofty goal of $70,000, what's that going to cover?
So basically, in a perfect world, that would cover quarterly intensive therapy blocks. So that means every 3 months we would be going to our physio and occupational therapist and just getting through these skills. It's been proven that the physiotherapy and the occupational therapy is most effective if it is done consistently. So that's kind of what these intensives are created to do, and just get the most bang for your buck, basically. So it'll cover 4 intensives a year, as well as her weekly therapy needs. So that's one session of PT and 1 session of OT a week. She also has speech. She has a speech therapist, a behavioral therapist, all the good stuff. So that $70,000 is to cover her for the next 2 years, which are kind of the most important years of her life in terms of neuroplasticity of her brain.
Give us some examples of how it's improved Amelia's life, whether it be with speech or her motor skills or anything in particular where we can really see the distinct benefit for her.
For sure. So before we started doing these intensive therapy blocks and just therapy in general, Amelia was solely a bum scooter. So that's her mode of transportation. And so going into these therapy sessions, they were really working on getting her, from sit to stand, obviously, and then just that need and that desire to actually take steps. As a parent, you just kind of look at the milestone. Oh, is she walking yet? But what the physio does is it actually breaks it down into tiny little pieces. And so, before you walk, you need to have balance. And before you have balance, you have to have coordination. And before you have coordination, you have to be able to, do all these little things. And so she's working on those every day. She's able to take probably 1 or 2 steps independently on her own. So we're working on that. And then just her desire to want to do these things and the motivation. So once she gets a taste of what walking's about, she wants to do it more. So we're, integrating her walker into her life and things like that.
Tell us about her sister, Brinley.
Oh, Brinley is just a gem. She is 10 next month, and she's wonderful. She's always so helpful, and she's got unconditional love for Amelia. Having a sister with cerebral palsy can be difficult. Having a sister with any disability can be difficult. Sometimes that limelight always feels like it's on your sister and things like that. And she shows such unconditional love towards Amelia. And we try and make sure that, we take the time and we make everyone feel special in the family. So.
How do you take time for yourself and your husband, Andrew? Because we've seen the Citizens Advocate report from the office talking about the emotional toll, the financial toll of raising children with disabilities, severe or otherwise. So how do yourself and Andrew take care of yourselves?
It's hard, oftentimes we get put on the back burner, and that's, it happens with parenthood in general, more so when you're raising a kid with disabilities. You have to carve out that time. So, sometimes we have a respite worker come to the house. So, I can take 2 minutes or an hour outside of the house and just kind of, go for a walk or, exercise or, even sometimes a trip to the grocery store by myself is very therapeutic.
I totally understand. Before we give people the information about where they can go to make a donation, where are you from in Alberta?
So we are from a small town just outside of Calgary. And so we're very close to Calgary. Let's call it Calgary.
It's a great part of the world, no question about it.
Okay.
So let's get the information out there, Samantha, where people can go to make a donation if they're so inclined and have the resources.
For sure. So it's a lovely charity here in Alberta, and it's called hopeforcerebralpalsy.com, and then it's /Amelia-Baker. And that's just the website. You'll see on Hope for Cerebral Palsy's website just how much of an impact they make with kiddos throughout Alberta who have cerebral palsy. And I think it's just important that, the word gets spread that, it needs to be these kiddos with disabilities, they need a voice, and not just in Alberta, but every province. And it just kind of goes unheard sometimes, right? So.
Samantha, thank you for calling the program this morning, and give all hands a hug and a hello from me, please.
Will do. Thanks so much.
You're welcome. Good luck. Stay in touch.
Okay, we'll talk to you later.
Okay.
Thanks.
Bye, Samantha.
Bye-bye.
There we go. That fundraiser. If you're out there and you can help, please do. Let's take a break. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 3. Say good morning to Paul French with the Rover Search and Rescue Organization, and joins us on 3. Paul, you're on the air.
Hey, Petty, how are you?
Not too bad, Paul. I got to put you on hold. Got a terrible phone line. Hate that. Let's go to line number 1. Paul, you're on the air. Hi, Paul.
Petty, I'm hoping that your listeners might be able to help me out this morning. I came back yesterday afternoon there between 5 and 6 o'clock from Cochrane Pan,
Yeah.
Parkdura, and between Cochrane Pan and Torbay Road, I was hauling an ATV here in the rain and everything, and I forgot to take the seat off it, and my seat cushion belonged to the back seat blew off. And I was just wondering, if somebody picked it up or if they saw where it blew off to in the area, that they could give me a call and let me know.
Yeah, absolutely. So you were not entirely sure where it bounced off, but if you see this ATV seat, it's no good to you, but it's important to Paul. So you want to give out your number, or you want Dave Williams to keep it for you?
Yeah, no, I can give out the number there. It's 709 753 9069, and the cell phone number is 746 5612.
Okay, I got the number. So, folks, in and around the Cochrane Pond area, you see an ATV seat, it's Paul's. Give him a call so we can get it back to you.
Okay, I appreciate that. Thanks very much, and I enjoy listening to your show.
I appreciate that very much, and good luck getting the seat back. Thanks, Paul.
Doing a great job. Thank you,
Thanks, buddy. All the best. Bye-bye. Let's see if we have a better phone line on 5 when we try to join Paul French from Rover Search and Rescue. Paul, you're on the air.
Hey, Paddy, how are you?
Excellent today. How about you?
Not too bad, sir. Just calling today. I just wanted to sort of spread some awareness around Emergency Preparedness Week, which is this week, May 4th to the 10th. And noting that this is actually the 30th anniversary of the Emergency Preparedness Week. The theme this year, Paddy, is knowing your risk and being prepared, and just wanted to sort of share some information with regards to that, and just sharing with folks that understanding that safety is a shared responsibility. So in Canada, our emergency management structure is very much bottom up, right? So it starts with us as individuals. Then it moves to our municipalities, to our provinces and territories, and then the federal government, and God forbid, maybe even internationally. But understanding that we all have a role to play, and that's why I think this year's theme is, on point in that we all have a role to play, so we should know ours and sort of do our best to prepare the best we can. Noting that, Patty, we can never be prepared for everything, right? And everybody has different levels of vulnerabilities and so on and so forth. But there's still a great deal that we can do. And sometimes it's just one more thing that we got to do, right? And maybe it's, well, that'll never happen to me, and those sorts of attitudes. And I'm guilty of that as well, as much as anybody else, right? But it's important this week. It's important every day, but I think this week is a great reminder to sort of stop, think, and reflect, and consider what some of our risks are when it comes to disasters impacting our communities or us personally, right?
Because emergency preparedness comes in many different forms, whether it be, preparedness for natural disasters, preparedness for my own inherent risk, whether it be as a fish harvester or on the skidoo or as a hunter or as, preparedness plans in your own home. So understanding the risk is key. And then they've got the old so-called 3 C's, check, call, care, right? So there's a lot to this. How do you think people should go about identifying their own risk risk, because sometimes it's high level. If I'm a fisherman, then maybe it's about getting hurt on the deck. Maybe it's about falling into the merciless North Atlantic. So what are the questions I should be asking myself?
Well, it's really taking a pause, right? And I always tell folks, we're teaching our Adventures to My program, you get into a situation, take 3 deep breaths. And sometimes all that pause is what's needed to sort of, trigger yourself to sort of think about, what I need to do here or what are some of these impacts. But for me is, taking a look at your area. If you're, here in Newfoundland, if we look at our situation, we get, flood season, I would say, is behind us. It wasn't really much of an issue here. I know there was some tense moments out in Badger this year and whatnot. And now we're quickly in, we're in the fire season, right? And we've seen that this week. And I'm, my heart going out to all the folks over in Adams Cove in those areas, and the people impacted, with the other fires out in Badger and Vermeuse and those areas, right? But I'm sure no one expected that on what was it, Wednesday. No one expected their day to turn out like that. So it's having a plan and thinking about and giving consideration to, what are the possibilities? What can happen here? And sometimes it might seem far-fetched, but it's important to prepare for those things that we might think that, aren't important, or that'll never happen to us or whatnot. Is important to consider those. So, from a broad, environmental perspective, thinking about the forest fires, thinking about the floods and our coastal storms here and our northeasters in the winter time, and being prepared for power outages due to ice storms or, hurricanes or those sorts of things, and as you say, Paddy, risk and these hazards, have a different impact on different people, different environments, right? So it's considering your own, making a plan for that, and sharing that with your family, right? So understanding that you might have a plan in your head, but if your family members don't know that, that's no good, right? So having a plan in place, people need to start thinking about, and I try not to be, negative, or I'm not here to scare anybody, Paddy, but people need to consider not being able to access funds out of their accounts, or being able to pick up their cell phone to call people. And I know that's again a bit of a far stretch, but it's a possibility, right? And we need to consider those things when we're developing our plan. So maybe thinking about a location in your community where you're going to meet, or looking at your own municipalities or your provincial's government emergency plan, and identifying, a warming shelter in your community, and saying, well, you know what, maybe that's our muster place, and having a kit prepared in a bag or in a tote or something that you can grab and go. And things that you want to consider about, having in that is, food and water, communications, flashlights, auxiliary batteries, first aid kits, shelters or blankets, some sort of entertainment, hygiene, sanitation, and money, and even, cash, right? It's when we get into these situations, it's, when we're forced out of our homes last minute, it's hard to think about all these things. So the more you can have prepared ahead of time, the better we're able to cope with those things. So again, just want to make the point that, we can prepare, but that doesn't mean we can stop hazards from impacting us. That's sometimes it's impossible. These things happen, but it's how we prepare for them is what's important. Yeah,
we can mitigate some risks, and the rule of thumb is, insofar as your family being prepared, is 72 hours. Without other services, so that you can get through and weather that particular 72-hour storm. There's also, and it's not to be getting into your neighbor's business, so to speak, but there, I think, is pragmatic approaches to it too. They talk about things called block buddies, because my risk in my home might not be the same as my 82-year-old neighbor, who I can indeed and should indeed understand her needs and wants if something bad happens in our neighborhood. So a bit of that sharing of information for people who are willing and wanting to share, I think, can also make for a safer, cohesive neighborhood to try to get through some of these issues if we're talking about prolonged power outages or fires or floods or whatever. So there's a lot to this. Anything else you'd like to add to it this morning, Paul, while we have you?
Yeah, Petty. I could speak for hours. I know we don't got it, but Emergency Preparedness Week is broken down into 7 days, and each day has a theme. And today's theme is outdoor safety. And I just want to put a plug in there for the Adventure Smart program, and that really focuses around the 3 T's: trip planning, training, and taking the essentials. Now more and more people are out hitting the trails, getting the campers ready for camping season, and hopefully fishing season and everything else. So think about those three T's, sorry. So trip planning, training, and taking the essentials. It don't matter what adventure you're getting involved with. You need to consider those, have a plan, tell someone your plan, have the right equipment, and know how to use it. Because how often do we say, we find people in the woods, or, oh yeah, well, I got a GPS, but I don't know how to use it, right?
That's right.
It's no good to take it with you if you don't know how to use it. And then, for anybody else looking for more information on Emergency Preparedness Week, they can go to getprepared.ca and understand again, prevention is worth a pound of cure.
I just saw an email flowed in with a couple of suggestions for your emergency kit, and this makes a lot of sense. Number one, a battery-powered radio can be helpful, and certainly for folks out in the woods, a whistle. An excellent idea to have a whistle in your kit.
Absolutely.
Good to have you on the show, Paul. Happy Emergency Preparedness Week.
Thanks for your time, Betty.
My pleasure. All the best. Bye-bye. Here goes Paul French with some helpful messages. Let's take a break. Do not go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 2. Good morning, Mark. You're on the air.
Yes, Betty. Thanks for taking my call.
No problem.
Just one moment. I'd just like to talk... May the 9th, Friday. We've gone to another weekend. It's nice to see a new pope. I'm sure Trump will try and take credit for this one. Also a big shout out to my buddy in the East. I'm gonna make this short today. Big shout out to my buddy Wilson in the East End, and keep on winning your pro line. Good luck to the Leafs tonight and Winnipeg. And what was the other thing? Oh yeah, we could always shake the tariffs ourselves too. You know what I'm saying?
No.
So if a country puts on tariffs on their own people, which Trump has done, we don't have to charge our citizens tariffs. It's just we're doing that in retaliation, right?
That's what they refer to it as, a reciprocal tariff. Yeah. Yes,
right. So I think we should just keep that in mind as I close up my call today. There's about other ways we could get through this, right?
Well, a couple are, expanding markets to elsewhere, like, for instance, in Europe, and interprovincial trade barriers and the like, for sure. But quick question before we run out of time, Mark. Your buddy in the pro line, so did he recently hit a big one or just hit one?
Oh, no, he heard me on the line there last week, and I told him I'd give him a shout-out, He's, we're all watching the sports, and he's a good friend. You know who you are, Wilson. We'll talk to you later, Patty. Thank you.
No sweat, Mark.
I'm going to let you go.
All the best. All right, there you go. Good luck with the pro line. I'm going to save Danny for right after the news because it's 10:59 in 13 seconds. But for hockey watchers, the playoffs are always outstanding. But I'm not so sure I've seen a performance quite like Mikko Rantanen, in Dallas. It's unbelievable. He's been in on all the last 12 goals from the start. 12 back-to-back hat tricks. That hasn't happened since Jari Kurri playing with Wayne Gretzky in the 80s. And before that is some guy playing for the Blackhawks in the 40s or something. So Rantanen is absolutely on fire. When he plays like that, he's a world beater. He's top 10 hockey players in the world for sure. And imagine, Colorado couldn't keep him. Columbus didn't want him. And now, if the Stars got knocked out in this round, he'd still be in the conversation for Conn Smythe. I've never seen anything quite like it. He's big, he's fast, he's got the hands, and boy can dance. Let's take a break for the news. When we come back, Danny's in the queue to talk about oil and gas. Don't go away.
You're listening to a rebroadcast of VOCM Open Line. Have your say by calling 709-273-5211 or 1-888-590-8626 and listen live weekday mornings at 9 a.m.
Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 3. Morning, Danny. You're on the air.
Yes, Patty from South Colorado.
Welcome to the show.
Who owns the turnover well? What oil company? Is Suncor?
Say that again?
Suncor owns the turnover well?
The Terranova oil field?
Yeah.
Yeah. Suncor Energy, Synovus, and Murphy has a little piece of it as well. Actually, I can't remember how much Murphy has.
Well, you think they spend so much money to go in South Korea to repair it, and then building up the alarm to repair it again, and Newfoundlanders are working on it, and you think they'd build a platform for it, wouldn't they?
Well, no, I mean, it's up to the oil companies if they choose to build a structure like out at Hibernia or use an FPSO like they do out at Terra Nova. But when the FPSO got sent away for the work, it's amazing to me how long it took, and then upon return, it had to go back out to Bull Arm for not only additional repair, but to redo some of the work that was done shoddily by whatever yard took it on in the first place.
Down South Korea.
Okay.
White Rose South is going out when? To the Grand Banks?
Are you talking about floating out that big concrete gravity-based structure? Yeah, okay.
Yeah. When is that going to happen?
They already started floating it out in Placentia Bay. When the final tow out is, I'm not entirely sure.
Now, do you have problems with the fishing nets, don't they?
Well, there's a compensation program that's in place. The harvesters in the area have to self-report, and you can do that too and with the union. So they are asking for compensation, and there will be some monies flowing, and that's just for those harvesters impacted in Placentia Bay. Other than that, I don't know if there's another program.
Is the modules company put out in Grand Banks on the gravity base?
There's certainly work to be done once it arrives at its final destination, yeah?
How come it's not done in Argentina?
Well, the work was done in Argentina.
The platform?
That gravity-based structure, that was built in Argentina, yeah?
Yeah, how about the modules?
Oh, I don't know.
Don't know.
I'm really not sure.
And I gotta say something else. All you hear on your talk show is the fishery. Nothing but the oil and gas.
Boy, we talk about oil and gas a fair bit here.
Yeah.
And what would you like to discuss now that I have you? What about oil and gas would you like to talk about?
Well, I'd like to see a lot of work. Like we got a lot of resources here. We got the Muskrat Falls.
Yeah.
Where are we getting our power from now?
Well, depends on where you live, I suppose, but there's power coming from in St. John's. You're getting power from Holyrood, and of course across the island you got Hardwoods and Bay Despair and other generating facilities. Of course you got Muskrat, so there's a bunch of different sources.
Yeah. Yes, kind of. You think we're getting any royalties off the oil and gas?
Absolutely. Somewhere around $1 billion a year.
How about the natural gas? Are we getting any resources out of that?
No, is the short answer. So there's trillions of cubic feet of natural gas off our shores. The issue there is that the companies at the current price point can't make any money at it. If they could, they'd be producing it.
Yeah. There's not much to go after, is there?
Oh, there's lots out there. There's tons of gas out there.
Yeah, but it's not good for development yet.
Well, it's a price issue. But
yeah. Okay.
Anything else?
No, that's it.
I appreciate the time. Thanks for the call.
Take care.
You too, buddy. All the best.
Bye.
Okay, bye-bye. Yeah, there's lots of gas out there. I mean, people talk about there are some proponents out there talking about pipelining it to shore, and then there's conversation about liquefying it offshore itself. And there are rigs that do this. There's some massive rigs in this world that are doing exactly that. It's a price point issue. I can't remember what the number is, but years ago there was an examination done formally about what the cost per MMBTU would have to be for it to be a profitable venture, because no question there is a ton out there. All right, so we talk about Emergency Preparedness Week. It's also Municipal Awareness Week, I'm pretty sure. Joining us on line number 2 is the president of Municipalities Newfoundland and Labrador. That's Amy Cody. Hi, Amy, you're on the air.
Hi, Patty. Thanks for taking my call this morning.
Happy to do it. What's happening during this Awareness Week?
Well, I thought it was fitting. Here it is Friday already. The week kind of flew by. Our municipalities, our councillors, and our administrators have been doing different activities all throughout the week, highlighting the important work that we do each day in our community. So I just wanted to drop in and say thank you to them. It's a lot of times the work that we do goes unrecognized. We're criticized a lot of the times for doing things that people sometimes don't agree with, or not doing the things that people think we should be doing. It's not an easy job, and I say that it is a job. For the most part, we're volunteers, but this is, it's a massive undertaking. It's a lot of responsibility, and a lot of hard work goes into what we do to run our municipality. So a big thank you to everyone involved in everything that they did all this week, and especially throughout the year, to keep our communities thriving and wonderful places to live.
Not to offer a civics lesson, but a lot of the things that deal with our day-to-day activities are handled by your municipality. We talk about the feds and all the big issues. We talk about healthcare in the province, but an awful lot of stuff, whether it be the ballpark and the dog parks and the snow clearing and the delivery of water and everything, so many things under that particular umbrella that are municipal responsibilities. So, we complain sometimes to the wrong level of government. And I know you already get enough complaints, so I'm not trying to fuel that particular fire, but it's absolutely true, and it's very, very real. So inside of the Awareness Week, give us a couple of specifics, whether it be for staff who have their hands full, especially when we talk about smaller municipalities, 1 or 2 people that are running the whole show, in addition to the efforts put forward by councillors, deputy mayors and mayors alike. So just point us to an example where you think this is something that's going on in small communities that people are probably not aware of, but should be thankful or grateful or applauding the efforts.
Well, the most obvious items, of course, are your garbage collection, your snow clearing, the maintenance of our grounds and playgrounds, our sidewalk upgrades, curb, gutter, pavement, all of that. That's all falls under the municipal realm. The funds, for most part, there are top-up funds from the provincial and federal government in the cost-sharing programs, but the majority or a lot of that funding does come from the municipality itself to maintain those items. I will bring it back to provincial budget and some of our advocacy. Volunteer firefighters, they fall under the municipal council's responsibility. So what we advocated this year was for training funds for our volunteer firefighters. It's unbelievable when you think about it, but the amount of pressure, the amount of skill, and the amount of training and volunteer hours that go into being a municipal firefighter, they're fundraising. Most fire departments are fundraising so that they can send their members to do the important training that's necessary to serve their communities. So the advocacy work that we did this year, we asked for and received $225,000 of funding for volunteer firefighters now to be able to go out and get that training. That funding, like I said, was either being fundraised by the firefighters themselves, or it would come from the municipal revenues. And we know our revenues come from property tax and business tax. So the alleviation of having to come up with that amount of money and the amount of service and extended service that firefighters are being called on now, you'd look at their assisting in motor vehicle accidents, hazardous material spills. They're assisting not just fire calls, but any emergency calls, assisting ambulance. They're doing scene control, assisting RCMP. So that has been a huge win for us in being able to obtain that money for our volunteer firefighters. The wastewater monitoring, again, is another huge responsibility financially on municipalities. We received $100,000 annually in this year's budget. That is going to assist now municipalities to be able to purchase equipment and do the training so that they can do their monitoring themselves, so that we don't have to outsource. Again, that's going to be a huge savings to our municipalities. And I think one of the other things as well, as we're talking about Municipal Awareness Week, we're in an election year again, and we're thinking we're probably going to be the last of three. We just came out of the federal one. We're expecting a provincial election call any time now, between now and I think it's the middle of October. They have to do their election. Ours is scheduled and fixed. We go on October the 2nd this year. Would have been September 30th, but we moved it to October the 2nd this year in recognition of, oh goodness, it just left my head. I'll think of it in a second. Anyway, we moved it to October 2nd. I mean, we're hearing constantly the code of conduct complaints, the amount of work, the difficulty in attracting new people to put their names forth for council. So we just launched our Make Your Mark campaign at our symposium last week. We're going to be, coming out heavy, talking about the great work that councillors do, the importance of the work that councillors do. We need some excellent candidates to come forward. We know we have these people in our communities because we talk to them every day. They're volunteering in other areas. They're talking to us, making their ideas known. So we need to be encouraging those individuals to come forth, put their name on a ballot. We need to have big ballots. We need to have lots of people interested in doing this municipal work. We need to talk about the good things that we're doing. Of course, yes, we hear a lot. You always hear, the bad or the discouraging items. But there's much more good than there is bad, and I think we need to do a better job of highlighting that and in supporting each other. And, of course, we also need to be examples. We need to do better ourselves, and we need to model the behavior that we expect to see and encourage it around the council table.
And of course, municipalities are in charge of their own bylaws and what have you, but they're all operating under provincial legislation. So give us a meaningful update about what the impact of the Town and Local Service Districts Act, because it was tabled back in 23, eventually got passed. Important things like how taxation is applied and the opportunity to expand revenue generation in municipalities. Has it been adopted and working the way it was intended?
For the most part, it's still early. It was just adopted and released or implemented in January of 2025. So we're working our way through it. We just had a session last week at our symposium in Gander talking about the new Towns and Local Service District Act. Still lots of questions. We're working our way through it. The ability to create bylaws, the different levels of taxation, just the different ways that we can now do things. We refer to it as enabling legislation, which is what we've been asking for a long time. Still some hiccups on a few items, and there will be training coming out as well from the Department of Municipal and Provincial Affairs. So we'll all be taking part in that to make sure we have a full and better understanding of the new Act, and that we're implementing those changes properly and rolling them out in a timely fashion in our communities.
Yeah, because it's not like heavy-handed legislation. I think enabling is a good word, because there's such a thing as a mandatory bylaw, then there's discretionary bylaws, and that's been updated and modernized. So, not to deal with the antiquated legislation that was in place, even some of the old forms of taxation that are old as the British Empire, for the God's sake. Anything else, Amy, before we say goodbye this morning?
No, just again, a huge thank you to all councillors and administrators right across the province of Newfoundland and Labrador. It's so important, the work that we do. I thank you all from the bottom of my heart. I can't say enough good about you, and encourage you all, again, put your names forward for the municipal election in October. And just, I guess, to cap everything off, I just do want to say a huge thank you to Premier Andrew Furey as he transitioned out, and of course, congratulations to incoming Premier John Hogan. We look forward to continuing a positive working relationship with the provincial government and maintaining our seat at the table, because because it is so important for our voice to be heard.
Absolutely. Thanks for your time this morning, Amy. Enjoy the rest of Municipal Awareness Week, and we will absolutely play a role in trying to promote the new Make Your Mark campaign for sure.
Actually, you're always very, very supportive, so thank you so much from all our members.
My pleasure, Amy. Stay in touch.
I will. Take care.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
And just a quick mention of this information from a listener. The topside module is being completed this month in Ingleside, Texas. Floated up here then to mate with the GBS offshore. Thanks for that, Paul. Let's take a break. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. We'll stick with the municipal angle. Let's go to line number one. Say good morning to the Mayor of Harbour Grace. It's Don Coombs. Mayor Coombs, you're on the air.
Morning, Paddy. How are you?
Very well. How about you?
I'm doing all right, Paddy. Just phoned to give a little update on the Amelia statue.
Yep.
It still hasn't been found, but the RCMP and their GIS officers are on top of it, and anybody with any information can reach out to them anonymously or to Crime Stoppers so we can get this resolved. And I certainly want to thank the provincial government for their support last night. And she's out there somewhere, so we got to try to get her back, Paddy. And as longer it goes, the harder it is going to be fine. So spoke to the Pike family this morning on options, spoke to Lupin, the sculptor who made that masterpiece, and trying to put things together. But I want your listeners to know where it's at to date, and they can still reach out and do it anonymously through the Crime Stoppers or the RCMP.
Yeah, I was preparing for the show whenever it was, either early this week, late last week, and I thought I heard you on with someone making reference to the fact that you have reason to believe that it's been cut up in however many pieces. Where did that come from?
That came from a source that reached out anonymously to us, and it was cut in, and that's what we had, and that was passed along to the RCMP. It was the head, the body, the 2 arms and 2 legs. So that was what was passed along. RCMP are doing their things. Of course, it's not as easy as we think. You just can't go up to a place and say, I want to go in your shed or I want to go in your garage or anything else. It has to be done properly with search warrants. They got to have, the backing behind the evidence behind the backing to get that thing. So, if everybody keeps on talking about and reaching out, that's it. But there were pictures floating around. That was what was said, and the RCMP are doing everything with it, Paddy. So hopefully we can get her back, and if not, we have to look at alternative things. And then that's why I spoke to Lupin. It was 2 years to build Amelia. And if it was to be repaired, it can be repaired if it's in those pieces. Thanks to Nuco Metals, Mr. Bursey, everybody is aware of it as whatever, Paddy. I think whoever got it didn't know what they got, and now the fear was there to how do I get rid of it or whatever. So, the option is there to anonymously put it somewhere in the woods or leave it somewhere, and we'll go get her picked up and get her put back together.
Yeah, so you mentioned Lubin. That's Lubin Boykoff, the sculptor who built that, and many other beautiful works of art. So just a quick question. You probably can't answer it, but if someone knew it was cut up, you think they'd also know who cut it up?
Yeah, and that's why, Paddy, we get the speculations and we get the different things, but it got to be proven. And I said, and I'll say it now on your line, if people have pictures, send us along the pictures. Right? You can do that to the RCMP. They're open-minded. They want this. This is a $270,000 to replace value, but it's priceless, and it's got to be found. It's got to be redone, and somebody got it under camera to see the pieces. Just let us know who you are. We'll get it investigated. It can be anonymous. There's no trouble in passing that along, Paddy. And I thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah, and hopefully someone comes forward, because for starters, I still can't believe that someone actually stole the statue. I mean, people are pretty brazen. I don't know what kind of inherent value it would have as opposed to the value it has to the community. Appreciate the update this morning, Mayor Coombs. And when you have something else to share, you're more than welcome back on the show.
Thank you, Paddy. And I want to thank you and VOCM for keeping it. You guys are keeping it in people's minds. We were at our function last night in the town with our Sports Museum Hall of Fame thing, where Minister Parsons announced the 50,000. We had 200 people there. I think a lot of the people there spoke about Amelia. If I go to St. John's with work or anything, people are talking about it. I spoke to people on the phone, and the same thing as you just said, they can't believe, and why.
Head scratcher. I appreciate this morning, Mayor Coombs. Stay in touch.
Thanks, Paddy. You have a great weekend.
You too, sir. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
That's Don Coombs, the mayor out in Harbour Grace. Let's see here. Let's take a break from the news. When we get back, still plenty of time left for you. The topic is entirely up to you. Don't go away.
The Tim Powers Show. Join the conversation weekday afternoons at 4 p.m. on your VOCM.
Welcome back to the show. Coming up beginning on the 13th of May, running through the 18th of May, is the annual Newfoundland and Labrador Sketch Fest. Oh, it's at the LSPU Hall. Join us on the line number 4 is the festival director. That's Andrew Tremblett. Good morning, Andrew. You're on the air.
How's it going, Paddy, today?
Couldn't be better. How about you?
Doing good. I'm listening to a lot of the news, and it's pretty hard to hear sometimes, and pretty it's stressful, I think. So I'm here to talk about a sketch comedy festival, and maybe hopefully start a discussion about just kind of the Newfoundland sense of humor, and just how that's important through like hardships and stuff, as we are in a big crazy news year.
It's awful. So let's get into it. So for Sketchfest, for starters, comedy sketches are really unique in the world of comedy. You can go from stand-up to movies and films and the like, TV shows, but the sketch itself can be killer, and you can catch lightning in a bottle.
That's right. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, they're and if anybody doesn't know, if they're not familiar, the best thing to describe your it's Cogco, right? It's Wonderful Grand Band, as Buddy was his name, and the other fellas. It's this hour's 22 minutes, and it's really a social criticism and kind of a celebration of our unique sense of humor. I think as Newfoundlanders, and how to get through the hardships that we go through. It's just a great way to, I think, celebrate us and kind of talk about our people and our culture.
100%. Inside the world, look, comedy is tough. It's hard to be funny. Some people are inherently funny. So what do you think is more important, the writing and the crafting of the sketch or the delivery? Because some very fundamental, simple topics can make for a killer comedy sketch.
Absolutely. I think it's the core of it is, what you're trying to say, what's your point of view. And I think that's why Newfoundlanders are so very good at sketch comedy. And I think that's why it's so ingrained in our culture, because we have such an interesting point of view, being on the far east coast of the country, and just having, we're always looking at kind of the Americans and all of Canada from the outside, and I think that gives us, a really good just perspective on it. So I think that's the important part, opposed to the writing or the performance. I think it's what do you want to say? And I think, again, that's why Newfoundlanders are pretty amazing at it.
So we'll dig into Newfoundland sketch comedy, and people jump into people's minds, whether it be Christopher Walken and More Cowbell, and Eddie Murphy and Mr. Robinson's Neighborhood, and what else comes to mind? Chris Farley's motivational speaker, which knocks me out every single time. Give us an example of what has been some killer Newfoundland sketch comedy, maybe some of the people producing it.
Yeah, absolutely. You mean modern or just historically?
You pick. Whatever you like.
Yeah, I would say historically, obviously, Cogco is the first thing that comes to mind.
For sure.
I mean, you think about the any of the sketches the boys did. And Andy's actually part of a festival this year as the festival ambassador, and we'll be doing some older material. But I would say my favorite sketch is the. For Codco is the oil sketch, and you can even talk about the priest too, right? That was such a hard hitting sketch that got a lot of people in trouble, but I think it really spoke to kind of the Newfoundland sensibility of hey, we got things to say and we're not afraid to say it, and I think that's really important in this. And you think about Mom's Girls, who are absolutely killing it across the country. They have great shows. They do here. Half Handsome is another one, and there's lots of stuff happening here. But I really enjoy that Chris Farley sketch. I think that might have been one of the first sketches I've ever seen growing up.
I mean, Codco is just killer anyway. So for me, it's I love you, Dennis. I hate you, Paige. I don't know why that always jumps into my head right off the bat. So, give us a few name drops. You said Andy Jones, who's the ambassador. He's performing one night, and give us whatever you'd like to talk about regarding this year's Sketch Fest, so we can whet the appetite of the comedy lovers out there.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's kind of like emerging, and it's also very, very established groups, right? So Andy, for instance, is on Friday the 16th. He'll be doing a full 60 minutes. We have 28 groups from across Newfoundland and Canada. We have 2 shows a night from May 13th to 18th. And it's essentially just a celebration. And it's on May 13th is at 8 o'clock, we have what's called a Newfound Sketch Night. And that's 6 or 7 groups who are performing sketch for like the first time or the first few times. So we actually found out when we started this festival, Patty, that there was only 2 groups, like active groups in Newfoundland. And ever since we started it last year, 20 groups came out of the woodwork and said, hey, we want to do this too. And I think it speaks to the necessity of having, performance spaces and rehearsal spaces that are accessible to, young comedians and young performers, because we really need to, one of my things is we really need to put the resources back into our emerging performers and really highlight them and give them a space to perform. And that's what our festival is doing. We also have a few groups from Toronto. We have 2 groups from Washington, D.C., and the rest are Newfoundlanders. And and it's jam-packed, Patty. It's crazy. We got a crazy festival this year.
We punch above our weight in the arts and certainly in the world of comedy. And it just popped back in my head. Now you got Codco in my head. And this is linked to the news. The Papal Visit. Do you know that sketch?
Yes, yeah.
Oh, my God. The head of the church. Head is as big as a church. Anyway, pretty great stuff. So whatever information you'd like to share here, because I always have the numbers for the LSPU Hall for people to buy their tickets and what have you. Final message from you.
Yeah, so we're the Newfoundland Sketch Comedy Festival. It's happening from May 13th to 18th at the LSPU Hall. 2 shows a night. 7 and then 9 o'clock, and you can get our tickets at the LSPU website, LSPU Hall website, or you can get them from our own website, nlsketchfest.com. And I just really want to tell your audience that we need the support too. Lots of big music festivals happening this year, like Churchill Park and Iceberg Alley, and that's all great. But we have accessible ticket prices. Our tickets range from $10, $20 to $30, and so it won't hurt your wallet. And if you need a good laugh, then we're here for you.
And you can also call the hall, 753-4531. Andrew Break-a-Leg, are you participating in addition to being the director?
I'm on Thursday night with my group, Bicycle Jousting.
And the Itty Bitty Skitty Committee.
Yeah, they're Sunday night, and they're a bunch of comedians from Newfoundland and Toronto that got together. They're a newer group, but they punch well with comedy. They've been doing it for a long time.
Good to have you on the show, Andrew. Break a leg, and good luck with the event.
Cheers, Patty. Have a good day.
You too, pal. Bye-bye. Andrew Tremblett is the festival director at the NL Sketchfest, and yes, needless to say, could use a laugh every now and then. That's faux show. Okay, just about time for our final break of the morning and the week. Final check-in on the Twitter box. We're VOCM Open Line. Follow us there. Email address is openline@vocm.com. When we come back, there's always issues, I'll say, inside the fishery, both here and across the country, where they participate in the commercial fishery. Join us on the line is the president at the FFAW, Dwan Street, and then we're going to wrap it up talking a bit of recreational food fishery and maybe time for you to talk about whatever's on your mind. Don't go away. Welcome back to the program. Let's go to line number 7. Say good morning to the president of the FFAW. That's Dwan Street. Good morning, Dwan. You're on the air.
Good morning, Patty.
It seems like a lifetime ago when yourselves and the ASP had a joint press conference talk about the potential for tariffs in the United States, and that was short-lived. So what do we have going on here now with the people trying to offload and sell their crab, whether it be here and or up along?
So before we get into that, Patty, I just want to say thank you to outgoing Fisheries Minister Jerry Byrne. Of course, this morning, Jerry's gone back to Jobs, Immigration and Growth. Jerry did some great work for free enterprise for harvesters in the province. And, of course, now with Minister Dempster coming on the fisheries file, we've worked very well together when she was in Labour. So we're looking forward to an equally good relationship with Minister Dempster. So, so you're right. We had hoped we would have a very good working relationship going forward with the ASP. to do good work and better the industry. It's become very clear that the ASP and the cartel at the ASP, that's not in their interest, and right now it's not in our interest to work with them in any capacity. Luckily, we have a bit of competition in this industry right now. And what that's doing, Patty, is loosening their grip on harvesters and the control that they have. And it doesn't seem that they like that, because we have a small buyer. Of course, Minister Byrne last year introduced some new buyer's licenses. And one of those licenses went to a company called Roughwater Traps. And it's Matthew O'Leary in Fox Harbour. Now, Mr. O'Leary has been very, very good to harvesters, has succeeded, grown his business, has a very good reputation, and now ASP is trying to intimidate and put the boots to him. So luckily, Mr. O'Leary knows his rights. He's not having it. And over the last week, it's just been a series of letters, phone calls, intimidation, bullying, threats to do things that Mr. Loader is not even authorized to do, to try and shut down Mr. O'Leary's business. I mean, it's just blatant intimidation and absolute unethical behavior.
So give me some specifics. What is ASP doing to whether it be Mr. O'Leary or anybody else?
Sure. So I've spoken to Mr. O'Leary, and I'm sure he'll be glad to call your program as well. Just today he's busy offloading crab, and they sent him a letter. Mr. O'Leary is paying well above the minimum price, and he's just paying premium price and not grading crab. So ASP sent him a letter and said he was in violation of the Fish Inspection Act, which is false. We have had conversations with the outgoing fisheries minister, who confirmed that our interpretation of the act is correct, that there is no responsibility for IDG, which is the grading company, to report back to the province on grades of crab. There is nothing in the Master Collective Agreement or in the crab schedule that requires Mr. O'Leary to utilize IDG to grade crab. And I've gone through the master and the schedule a million times, even though Mr. Loader keeps saying that he is in violation. He has requested proprietary information from Mr. O'Leary, including every purchase he's made, the names of the vessels, the ports, the amounts. That's none of his business. Mr. O'Leary is not a member of the Association of Seafood Producers and has no obligation to provide that information to Mr. Loader. So, he's just carrying on business as usual, and he's not going to be intimidated, and his business is not going to be shut down. There was also a letter sent to Mr. O'Leary saying that the ASP was suspending dockside monitoring services to Mr. O'Leary. The ASP has no business doing that. Dockside monitoring operates through the Fish Harvesters Resource Centre. I've been in contact with the executive director of that organization, who says absolutely not. There is no suspension, and there will be no suspension. So it's all these empty threats. I mean, the other day, Mr. Loader called Mr. O'Leary nothing short of 5 times. Voicemails are unhinged. Very, very threatening tone, and Mr. O'Leary is doing the right thing, just not responding and not answering those phone calls.
When it comes to grading, is it the processing company's responsibility to report to government, or is it the grading service?
No, so the province has their own inspectors, right? I mean, the grading is done, so most companies take deductions, whether it's for critically weak, dead crab, they'll deduct. That's up on themselves, and they utilize the company independent dockside graders to do that. Mr. O'Leary's just paying full price, top price for everything, and I guess those companies aren't liking the fact that there are vessels leaving those ASP companies daily because they're happy with the price and they're happy with the service that Mr. O'Leary's providing.
You're not allowed to process dead crab, though, are you?
No, and he's not processing dead crab.
No, but you said, the grading service, critically weak and or dead, but dead crab are just supposed to be disposed of, as far as I know.
Yes, and they are. Well, unless you're Quinlan's last year. And that's another thing. I mean, if Mr. Loader wants to talk about policy and wants to suspend grading services for somebody who he says is in violation, Quinlan Brothers has been found to have been in violation last year. We'll actually be in court in June about that, and we didn't see him suspend any grading services to Quinlan Brothers, and I'm sure he has no intention of doing so. So it's clear what's going on here. It's intimidation of a buyer who's growing his business is successful, and ASP, they're just losing that business and have no interest in competing. I mean, this is what competition does, right? It's healthy, and we certainly hope that we're going to see more competition in the industry. We've also had reports out of the Maritimes, so this is going beyond Newfoundland and Labrador, of a harvester who went to the Maritimes to offload crab, had an agreement in place. Once he got there, was unable to do so. The company that he was selling to had access to the wharf revoked, access to the stevedore company, access to the forklifts and operators, and we're told, oh, no, sorry, we can't do this. And it's convenient that the wharf is owned by a member of ASP. So, all of this stuff, we would hear rumblings about it. Now we have folks willing to come forward because that control on the industry and the threats aren't as serious anymore when you have competition. We're not done with this. I mean, all of this unethical, immoral behavior has no place in our industry. Harvesters should have free enterprise. They should be able to sell where they want, whether that's in the Maritimes, whether it's here, and they should have competitive prices. Buyers should be able to set up shop, be competitive, and operate without threats and intimidation and their phone going off constantly all day and all night, being told, I'm shutting down your business when I have no authorization to do so. So we have been working closely with the provincial government over the last week on this. Justice will be giving an opinion. Again, outgoing Minister Jerry Byrne confirmed with us that our interpretation of the Act is correct. And, this type of behavior just needs to be called out for what it is.
I appreciate the time this morning, and while we have you on the line, Mr. Loader is also welcome to join the program to speak to what you've said here this morning, as usual. Anything else quickly before we run out of time, Dwan?
No, I think that's about it, Patty. Have a great weekend.
The very same to you. Take care. There's Dwan Street, the president at the FFAW. Final thoughts this morning goes to line number 1. Barry, you're on the air.
Good morning, Patty. Thanks for taking my call.
No problem.
I was recently in Ottawa on another matter, and I took the time to make up a sign and go to Parliament Hill and take a video and address our concerns about the food fishery directly to Prime Minister Mark Carney. And we're very concerned, as I've said before. Patty, you asked me a question a couple of weeks ago about the amount of time for government to implement what we're asking for, and the amount of time will be not nil at all. There's no big decisions. There's no big implementation of policies to give us an extra 5 fish per person and to extend the season, in my opinion. How much fish is the food fishery taking? I'm willing to bet, Patty, that one net full of fish from a dragger or trawler is more than the total catch-up that what the food fishery has. I'm not saying anything negative about the commercial fishers. A reminder about the petition that we have on the go through change.org. It's on our food fishery Facebook page. Please look it up and sign it. A like is not good enough. We need your signature to sign it. This is the year for change. Please sign the petition. It can be found, as I said, on the Food Fishery Fighters Facebook page. Phone or email your MP to let them know how you feel. And I challenge, Patty, the new DFO minister, whoever that may be, to sit down at the table and discuss this issue with me. I'm confident that because I can speak directly about and to the issue. Politicians are known to dance around the issue and thus wasting time so they do not have to give an answer. We are very concerned again this year, Patty, and you've said it a number of times that DFO each year waits till the last minute to make the call about the food fishery when they know what it is. We as the citizens of Newfoundland and Labrador are looking now, seeing that the moratorium after 32 years has been lifted, and even foreign trawlers, foreign companies can come to Newfoundland and Labrador waters and catch the amount of fish that they want to catch, and as in the past, probably more than that. And yet we here in Newfoundland and Labrador, the citizens of Newfoundland and Labrador, are relegated to 3 days a week for a measly 5 fish, risking our lives sometimes unnecessarily because of bad weather. Our expatriates of Newfoundland and Labrador who had to move away because of the moratorium are waiting for some kind of call to see what time they come back to plan their holidays. We had rotational workers. We had tourists. We have everybody waiting and wondering when this is going to be, and yet nobody in our provincial government, I know it's not a provincial matter, Patty, but in the federal government, the MPs, newly elected MPs, are silent. Not a sound about it. We're looking
Understood.
for some support.
Simply because we're 12 o'clock on the dot, we'll have to leave it there, Barry. Appreciate your time.
As always, it's been a pleasure, Paddy.
My pleasure, Barry. All the best. Bye-bye. There we go. We are indeed out of time, but we will pick up this conversation again on Monday morning, right here on VOCM and Big Land FM's Open Line. On behalf of the producer, David Williams, I'm your host, Paddy Daly. Have yourself a safe, fun, happy weekend. Talk Monday. Bye-bye.